Mr. Chairman, at the heart of this is a question whether this was the one faced by the President. Is an Iran without nuclear weapons better for our national security, for the Middle East and for the world, than an Iran with nuclear weapons? That was the question. And the engagement of Mr. Rhodes was one significant person among hundreds, and along with our best allies, France, Germany, England, and also our sometimes frenemies, China and Russia. And the collective decision of those countries and us was that the Iran nuclear deal was in our collective interest. Now, there was fierce disagreement about that among the witnesses and among many of my colleagues here in Congress. But this was a long and complex negotiation that was ultimately ratified by our strongest allies. And there was a judgment that the Commander-in-Chief had to make as to whether or not this agreement was in the national security interest of this country. I agreed with him. I worked closely with Mr. Rhodes and found him to be an exceptional public servant, knowledgeable, and, despite what you're saying, candid and direct. Let me just ask a couple of questions here, because the decision the President made was in contrast to decisions that a previous President made. Do each of you believe that the American people got the right information, that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iran? Each of you. Iraq. Thank you.
No, it's shown that it was false.
Right.
No.
No, the American people got what the intelligence community believed.
Who has supervisory authority over the intelligence community, sir? Mr. Rubin?
Congress.
The President has no role?
The buck stops with the President, but if we're talking about oversight, that's what separation of powers is about.
All right, so you're saying, and by the way, I'll go along with this, Congress blew it on the Iraq resolution. But are you suggesting to me that there is not ultimate responsibility for making the decision and evaluating the recommendations of the intelligence community on the matter of sending our troops to war, of spending trillions of dollars, throwing the Mideast up into upheaval, and he is not the one who ultimately bears the responsibility for that decision?
The President made the decision to go to war. I'm not willing to put the broad instability in the Middle East on his shoulders. The Middle East needs to be accountable for the Middle East.
Second thing, so we went into this war in Iraq. We toppled Saddam Hussein. We were promised we'd make money on the war. That was testimony from some of the President's advisors. It would be over in 60 days, and the troops would be greeted with flowers in the street. Didn't work out that way. Afghanistan, the longest war in the history of this country. We still have troops there. The place is a mess. Nation building, an arrogant policy embraced by a prior administration. Didn't work out so great. Any of you think that Afghanistan is on a solid footing for democracy at the moment? Just a yes or no, if I can get that from each of you.
No.
Sir?
No.
No.
Sir?
No.
Right. So we have a President who says, you know what, this war approach isn't so great. And he had to make a decision, and he said, look, let's try negotiations. I supported sanctions. Every tough sanction that we were able to impose on Iran, I supported, as did virtually all of the Democrats and Republicans. You know what? The sanctions worked. It brought Iran to the table. In this decision that you're focusing on, this fine public servant, Ben Rhodes, because of a newspaper article, is something that then disregards the fact that we blew it in Iraq, we're blowing it in Afghanistan, and the President decided to pursue negotiations, got an agreement, and had the full support of those allies, the P5+1. So if there's implementation issues, let's get on it. I'm all for that. But to sit here and to suggest with this history of failure, when war is the option, that we should have done that, and that's essentially what the alternative was. That's essentially what the alternative was. I don't buy it. And I don't believe the American people buy it. And we're picking and choosing, trying to come up with some little detail that somebody somewhere said to suggest that we ought to unravel the whole thing. I disagree. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now